got, Scott, we've got Asa and Beta, Laura, Shamal, Liz, Geraint, Kurt. I know Hayden's had to go, and I know Michael's had to go. So I suggest we make a start. Now, chat. I'm going to open that just in case anyone's asking questions. But I'm going to kick this off, and I'm going to build on what we were talking about, what Liz and I were talking about just now, which is about the kind of when we talk about innovation, I'd like to talk about kind of place and geography within that, because, you know, there was an argument, wasn't there, during COVID and lockdown, or we're not through it yet, but during the lockdowns, that, you know, a lot of this activity could be transacted online, on Zoom, on Teams, or whatever. Didn't really matter so much where you were anymore. So long as you had an internet connection or a phone signal, you could do innovation. Didn't really matter where you were. And I suppose my question for people is, to what is the balance between having a physical hub location where your business can kind of like be incubated and where you can actually physically meet people and access mentoring, and let's think of more like a virtual membership where that could be an expanded community that's less geographically constrained. And one of the reasons is, I think, as I said, if you look across Norfolk and Suffolk, there are hot spots and there are cold spots in terms of geographic coverage, right? So there are places where you can travel for miles and miles and miles and not find a hub. And then there are areas where there's 2 or 3 within a city location, let's say. And given that we're quite a rural area, we have market towns, coastal towns, deprived communities, that whole kind of leveling up thing. You know, how do we make sure that innovation is accessible to everybody, that it doesn't matter where you're, you know, it's not a postcode lottery. And I'm actually gonna, Babita, I'm gonna ask Babita maybe to come in on this, because Babita, you're part of a wider organization called Oxford Innovation that runs Epicenter. Oxford Innovation also runs Innovation-Centric Knowledge Gateway in Colchester, just down the road. I mean, what's your thinking about this topic, Babita?
Well, Oxford Innovation, it's 27 centres around the UK, and that's a mixture of where we're working with academic institutions as well as private landlords as well. The ethos of Oxford Innovation is all around supporting companies, early stage companies, to come into the centres and then to support them through with business support and advice, and get them to a stage over an 18-month to 2-year period, and then to exit the centre. So it really is about flow. It's about bringing those organisations in, helping them to grow, helping them with whatever they need help in, whether that is raising investment, whether that's growing their teams, whether that's commercialising their technology, and then also helping them to exit into the system. So I think it's that is the essence of what innovation centres are all about. It's about supporting economic climates in the regions where they're set up, and a huge amount of I know that Lisa was saying she hasn't had a chance to go around and see all the centres yet. We've been fortunate enough that, Kelly and I, who's the centre manager here, we spent quite a lot of time going out and meeting with the other innovation centres and looking at how we can work together collaboratively as well. In the end, customers will choose a certain centre because of its location and facilities. But as across the region, we're really keen to see how we can become more joined up as well with what we're offering to our customers.
I mean, Liz, you kind of advocated the value for Stowmarket and the sort of geographic radius around Stowmarket of having innovation labs there. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, innovation labs have got plans to do more and in other places. Can you talk about any of that, or is it a bit too early?
I'm not sure I'm allowed to talk about that right now, but
I think it's in the public domain.
Is it?
There has been some that there are some plans in place. I think it's probably
so there are
places, but if you can't talk about it, that's
I won't talk specifics, but I going back to the geography point, I think geography is important. There's something really powerful, Geraint and I were talking about this earlier. There's something really powerful about a commute and actually being able to step out of your house and step into work. And I know that for lots of our members that have physically come to Stowmarket, for them, it's really important to have that thinking time between home and work, and also that separation. And I don't think we should ever downplay that in the world which is so virtual. So part of our growth plan is to open other innovation labs in other locations. To your point, Tim, in some of the small market towns that aren't necessarily served with co-working spaces, and actually enable people in those small market towns to access our network and our greater connected network of all of us fab people, to Babita's point. So I think, I think it is really important that there is access to centres geographically diverse, because not everybody can, we need to make sure we're accessible to every citizen within our kind of network, and that we're not only for people who can get to certain locations. I think it's really important, personally.
So building on that, you also talked about, access to the founders, access to the, the entrepreneurs behind the lab being a really important part of the value proposition. Geraint, Shamel, might want to come in on this one, and Asa likewise. I mean, is the future of innovation and these hubs more about private sector entrepreneurs playing a role in their communities? Is this more like a social enterprise thing, which is about democratizing innovation in places that don't have it anyway? Does the role of the public sector need to increase, stay about the same, decrease for it to be a healthy ecosystem? I mean, these are questions I'm just interested in people's views on, because there's probably been a bit of a narrative over the last 10 years in tech innovation that, we need to wait for the big, the central government to write some checks to open centres, or we need to get big corporates to do corporate incubators or accelerators. But it feels like in Norfolk and Suffolk, we're doing it a bit differently now, and I'd just be interested in people's views on that. Geraint.
Yeah, so let me just go back to when I started up. I was on my own. I had an idea. I saw something I could do better than anybody else I'd met in my career, and I decided to set my own company up. That decision was done by me and my wife and my loved ones. And I knew I needed a space. And it was a joke earlier, but it was true. I just needed Wi-Fi and coffee. I wanted a small commute. I wanted to get away from my wonderful young children so I could actually innovate and work. I wanted that commute, and I wanted Wi-Fi and coffee. And the moment I came to a co-working innovation hub, and I sat down, and another human being that didn't know me, didn't know anything about my company, showed an interest in my company. They cared, they gave a shit. That was phenomenal for me. I couldn't believe someone who had no interest in what I do suddenly had an interest in what I did. And that was incredibly powerful and enabling for me to grow. To point to one of the things you said there, Tim, though, who owns this? Is it a government? Is it a local authority? Is it a large corporate that operates out of somewhere? I think they all play a part. I would not have come here if it was sponsored by McDonald's. I probably wouldn't have come here if it was sponsored by BT. I'm sorry. If it had that corporate brand on it, I probably wouldn't have done this. It was because it was agnostic to that worked really well for me in my organization, if that makes sense.
I think that's really, really interesting. So, if we're looking at the whole ecosystem, where we've got kind of what I would see as a spectrum from grassroots, more community-based, more entrepreneur-led centres, to kind of through some sort of county council or public sector owned and funded centres, through to networks like the Oxford Innovation Network, which is a sort of specialist operator in the space, up to kind of corporate corporate incubators and spaces, a bit like Innovation Martlesham's obviously part of that BT world. It's horses for courses, right? Depending on who you are and what you want to do and what your wants and needs are, and very specifically where you're physically based as well, back to the short commute point, will influence where you choose to be. So, for example, there's a new co-work space in Saxmundham in Suffolk, which is called the Art Space. It's very much, it's done at the Art Station. It's very much around creative businesses, but it's also kind of quite funky and it's quite interesting. But it's certainly not owned by a corporate. At the other end of the spectrum, sort of down the road in London, you've got things like Cisco or Telefonica running incubators, where it's all about getting into the innovation, open innovation networks and supply chains of big businesses. So horses for courses, yeah.
But Tim, I think it's important to Babita's point, where are the entrepreneurs on their journey? Babita effectively said, we want to support them for not support them, but 18, 24 months, we help them grow and help them move out. And I think that's actually what we do. We're almost like a safe nest for really early startup entrepreneurs. And that's the thing that we can do really well, because we care and we, can surround them with support, with the likes of the support that we've received, as a business from New Anglia LEP, the services that Laura and her team, enable by connecting our entrepreneurs. We actually enable them to be successful. And if they are successful, guess what? They're going to grow, they're going to employ people, and they're going to move on. They're not going to stay with us, and we actually want that. We want our entrepreneurs to grow, to scale, and to move out, so we can get the next lot in. And I think that's where the really big centres, the likes of some of the ones in Cambridge, and some of the other brands that you've mentioned, are really helpful, because it's kind of like the next level. What we do is really at the micro level, I think, in terms of helping entrepreneurs start and scale. And what we do is we help them make money, because if you're not making money and you can't pay your bills, guess what? You can't afford to continue in your business.
I think also, if I could just add to that, just one small point, which is being in that environment, being surrounded by other people who are very similar to you, gives you a level of validation, which is almost like a human need. And I think when you're very early on in your journey, you need that, because it's very easy to start to question whether you're doing the right thing. So I think to be with other like-minded individuals helps significantly.
Okay, that's really interesting. So Kurt's coming in. Yeah, Kurt.
Yeah, I was just wondering, because obviously this conversation's new to me, but there's a couple of things that sprung to mind early on, but around, depending what you mean by innovation, if it's about people building new companies and all of that, yeah, there's support there. But what if you're a person in the rural county and you haven't got a job and you're trying to innovate, and one of these hubs isn't near you? There's a practical thing there. And the other thing for me is, a lot of innovation is based around digital, isn't it? So you need the connectivity, and some places in our rural county have got poor mobile phone coverage, let alone not very good broadband. So we heard about a game company earlier, didn't we? And if you say you were in the dark depths of Norfolk or Suffolk and you wanted to start a game company and you wanted to do it from your home, how do you do that if you haven't got good performance? So there are other things that need to be considered, I think.
There are. I mean, I think the answer probably to that, Kurt, is don't start it from home. Start it from one of the hubs if you can get there. And if you can't, I think we're going to have to just continue to lobby for better digital infrastructure. I mean, it clearly is a big part of innovation. And I mentioned the Tech UK Local Digital Capital Index when we started off. It's interesting if you look at where the region ranks, super high for innovation, pretty high for talent, pretty high for access to finance and funding, pretty lousy for digital infrastructure. That's just it's where we are, and I think that's kind of something with the colleagues in the LEP and the county councils and the local authorities and the chambers of commerce we've got to be pushing all the time for that. But you know, a short way down the road, a bike ride, a short drive, or on public transport, there may be a hub. And I know Scott's been doing some brilliant work mapping it all out as part of this. I think there's a thing called the Innovation Prospectus, Scott, on the LET website, isn't there? You might want to put a link to that in the chat for people who haven't seen it.
Yeah,
but I think,
sorry, Jim. Yeah, I mean, I'll share the link shortly. But yeah, I think, I mean, obviously things in terms of transport and connectivity, you know, there are ongoing challenges. But I think certainly from the Connected Innovation Project for ourselves, you know, working at the LEP and working with the innovation hubs, you know, it's one of the sort of key areas that we're looking to sort of, you know, drive this much more connected network. That means that you have access to this wider network of the hubs. You know, you have that wider capability, their wider support that you can access. And I think, you know, one of the key things I always notice with the hubs in terms of, you know, especially with Abita and with Liz as well, is that, you know, it's their mindset about how they run their, you know, their hubs that makes them so successful as well. It's, you know, that the ongoing support there. And like Geraint said, you know, he walks in there and there's someone straight there who's there to talk to them, who's there to support them, rather than, you know, your kind of typical landlord who's, you know, wants to make sure that the rent is collected at the end of every month. So, and I think, you know, what we're trying to sort of move forward really is, you know, being able to understand the challenges, like you mentioned, Kurt, in terms of the kind of transport and connectivity and infrastructure, in terms of how we can move that forward from probably a wider and more external perspective. But certainly in terms of the project, it's about, you know, being able to drive forward the connectivity between the hubs to make sure that, you know, where there are people that are looking to start the businesses, they're, you know, they're looking for the support, they're able to access it on a much wider scale rather than maybe being bound by their own locality.
Yeah, I was just thinking that I've spoken to quite a few people about the gaming industry, and you know, we get uni students leave who want to start a gaming company or start a technology business. But when you talk to them, I may get a different view to the people who deal with them all the time on here. But they, you know, they want to do it from home, and some of the people they work with are all over the country. So going to a hub doesn't necessarily work in that scenario, does it? So I know someone who's trying to start a gaming company up, and they've got people all around the world, so not just in the UK. So connectivity becomes more and more important to these technology companies. Yeah, it's just interesting conversation, isn't it? Just to understand, but the stuff you're going to share about that link, that prospectus, would be quite interesting, I think.
I mean,
course,
I might just sort of like add to that,
yeah.
that we as a game studio have people all over the country, but actually when you're actually building a game, the collaboration in terms of the creation part, it's really, really important. So we manage that by running workshops here. And we bring the people in to the workshop. The workshops run for about 3 days. The ones that travel in stay in hotel, and you know, you can't beat that, having the facilities where you come to the office bound that puts you into work mindset, and a place where you can collaborate. And with all, you know, a lot of games development companies, a lot of indie development companies don't succeed because they're spread out the way they are. You know, it's hard for them to deliver on a project because they're not really engaging with each other constantly. Although they say they are through teams, but the reality is it's not actually as easy as people think. It's very, very hard. And when you're doing a Zoom call or a team call, you know, it's not as it's just not as welcoming, as warm. It's very structured and sterile, which is very different to when you're in the room with people, you know. And there's absolutely no way we could have run our workshops remotely, you know, bringing people together. And for us during the pandemic, it's been very hard because we've not been able to bring people together. We've had to do it where we've had gaps and we've been allowed to, you know. And you know, we did a workshop before the last lockdown towards the end of last year, and we've only started doing them again. So you know, it is something we miss not being able to bring people together, but certainly it's important.
That's great. Shamal, I'd be really interested to hear from you on this, on your experiences. I know you're part of Innovation Labs, but I mean, your early stage, you've got ambition, you've got a mission. you clearly feel like you're in the right place, but I mean, what was your sort of thought process when you were looking at where to land?
Yeah, so when we first started in 2019, I joined Z Squared, which is a 3-hour ride one way, drive one way. So although, you know, they're quite a big accelerator, you know, I had to think, you know, 6 hours on the road when I had to meet a mentor or advisor or take part in a pitch session, etc. So kind of location has been my, you know, since then, location has been the key driver, basically. Then I joined Cambridge Social Ventures, run by the Judge Business School. They were a 1 hour's drive, basically, because I run another business. I'm a co-founder of another business. So, you know, I'm doing this and I'm kind of splitting my time half and half between the two businesses. And from that, so I have to save time from where I can. So that has been the key. I mean, they're all great. They help you in different ways. But from what I found with the Innovation Labs is the community and the mentors. They're really approachable. So I know if I have a question or I need to talk to someone because you can be, you know, you can get all alone in this job. So I know that I can WhatsApp Peter, the two Peters, as you know, either of the Peters or Liz or Hermione, and say, you know, can I get half an hour of your time? And then they're there for you. So that's been the main thing. I may not have shared this with Liz before. I was actually thinking of moving to Cambridge because, you know, before I found out about Innovation Labs, because I thought, you know, I can take both my businesses to Cambridge. And I moved down to Stowmarket from Cambridge because of a merger that I had with the other business. And, you know, felt, you know, there are people that I work with, colleagues, they're great, but you can't talk about the problems they have with, you know, within your business, you know, from an entrepreneur point of view with your colleagues, because, you know, we talk about day-to-day stuff, projects and everything. But yeah, so, I mean, our office is just upstairs to Innovation Labs. I didn't find out about Innovation Labs for 6 months since they started last February, I think. So I was planning the move, and I met, I think, Peter Brady in the car park because you know, we were both heading out. And I said hello because I've known about Orbital Media, and, you know, I was kind of following them, that company, his company. And he asked me what we're doing, etc. And then asked, do you know about Innovation Labs? Just pointing to the sign and said, no, you know, and that's how I joined. And so I kind of didn't move to Cambridge because, you know, I don't need to move because we have everything that we want in Stowmarket now. I'm not just saying just because of Innovation Labs, but the region is coming up really nicely. Laura and the grant support team has helped me, and I've met great people. I've met Brian Bush. I don't know whether you've heard of him. You know, through this network. So yeah, so I'm kind of happy that I made the decision here, you know, to stay here. For me, the location it was the key, basically. So if that helps.
That really helps. Yeah, I mean, you're happy. We're happy too. I mean, you are like an economic development officer's dream because you've said, I think, what government, particularly local government, regional governments, are always trying to do, which is, you know, kind of avoid that kind of brain drain. I don't think any of us are particularly would see someone moving to Cambridge as a brain drain because, you know, Cambridge is part of this region. But the message is, I think, clearly, you don't have to go to the Valley, you don't have to go to London, you don't have to go to Tel Aviv, you know, you don't have to go to Paris to have a successful tech startup. And the sort of vectors or the factors, I think, that I was writing down, you know, here are, you know, where are you based? You know, where's home? What stage is your company at? What vertical market are you in? And you know, where is your sort of total addressable market most likely to be a fruitful place for you to start? How ambitious are you? And if you're not ambitious to start with, you know, by the time you've met your peer group and a few mentors, you chances are you'll be more ambitious, because it's that community, that social, we're social animals, aren't we? And I think to Geraint's point earlier, it's also kind of, what's your taste? Is your taste for the corporate? Is it for the academic? Is it for the grassroots? Is it for the funky? Is it for the indie? You know, all of those are things that I think we should all be thinking about when we're trying to stimulate more innovation. We're 26 minutes past. I'm just going to, just as a 4-minute warning. I mean, I think my last question, and I'd just be interested in people's immediate thoughts. I mean, Scott, you're exempt from this to some extent, because you are Mr. Connected Innovation, and you probably you'd probably have a view. But I mean, if you want to talk about it, but to everybody else, it's like, for each of you, whether you're an entrepreneur or whether you're a program manager, or managing a center. I mean, like, what's the big thing? What would be the big thing that you would like to kind of get ticked off on the wish list? Kurt's talked about infrastructure, digital infrastructure being a big wish. I'm not going to allow any more conversation about that, because that kind of feels like it's a bit out of our hands. But in terms of actionable stuff locally, what would be like the big thing? Is it talent? Is it access to finance? Is it grow on space? Is it more connections? Is it more customers? Is it international? What is it? So I'm going to take, I'll take Asa first.
Okay, that's an easy one. Access to finance and talent.
Access to finance, access to talent. Shamal.
For me, all of the above, really. So access to finance is obviously, you can't run without that. But connections to the councils, and talent. With my other business, we seek talent from all over the world, so that hasn't been a problem. But yeah, so finance, connections, networking is very important.
Access to finance, access to talent, access to customers in the public sector in your case.
Yeah.
And then on the provider side, not just, and I won't take, I'd like more businesses to be applying for my program as an answer, because that's kind of maybe too obvious. But I mean, Liz, from your point of view, is there something that you'd like to see change or improve?
Well, I'd like more space. I'm very envious of the amount of space that Babita's got, because we're tiny. And actually, you mentioned grow on space. We've actually, because of what's happened economically, there is actually grow on space in the building that we're in. So we've been very lucky. We're helping our landlord fill his spaces that are empty, and we've negotiated really great rates for our members. But I'd like somewhere bigger, because I think we need more space to do what we're actually doing, and we can do it bigger and better. So I think getting more locations is a great start, but also having more space too, because this is the interesting thing. People sometimes walk in here and go, oh, is this it? And then you're like, yeah, but you haven't seen anything yet, darling. We've got a really poor shop front compared to some spaces. I'd love a much bigger, better shop front.
Hey, don't beat yourself up. I think your shop front's quite nice, and I love the car park story. Shamal's car park, meeting Peter in the car park is great. But yeah, I see what you mean. Right, we've got one time for very quickly, Laura, Kurt, or Babita, your wish list. Anything to add? Kurt.
Yeah, I was just going to say, just pre-lockdown, I went to the local hack space, and that's where a lot of the innovation has come from. Of what we're doing, and what we found was that they were struggling to find space that they could go and meet all the private individuals, come together and talk about innovation. So I support what Liz is saying. Yeah, space.
Okay, so hack spaces, more grow on space. Laura, any thoughts? Or
yeah, from my point of view, communication and networking. And from our project point of view, it's approach us, even when you see the idea of perhaps going into innovation funding is way off. It's not something you want to look at within the next few months. It's something which you'd like to find out more about, and it's starting those conversations really early, because we can support in that sort of side of things. And then as you get, we can nurture you through getting your innovation proposal to a point where you would be confident applying for competitions which arise. So yeah, networking and communication early on would be the thing I'd like to improve upon across the region.
That's great. And Babita, anything?
Yes, so I have 2 things on my list. I'd like to see improved transport infrastructure, and that's more of a macro thing, but definitely we need that. And also, I think if we could get access, financial support for startups to be able to come into innovation centres.
Okay.
Help them move into the space financially.
Love it. So on the startup side, I've got talent, I've got finance, access to customers as big drivers, and on the sort of supply side, on the hubs, I've got grow on space, kind of earlier engagement, better networks, and I've also got their digital infrastructure, transport, and I think, well, the elephant in the room is, could we have a heavy subsidy, like a massive intervention rate from government for the as it were, the property side? So for having a desk, why can't having a desk be free up to a point to get people off in the early stage? We could talk about this all day, and I hope I haven't dominated the Q&A, but as chair, it's my prerogative to do so, and there weren't any other questions in the chat or Q&A, so I'm assuming everyone's happy. I would just like to now, I think, kind of wrap up and thank all of our speakers today, and thanks also to Scott and to Bridget for organising this with me behind the scenes and up front. Scott, thank you for co-hosting with me. Thank you for Bridget for making the whole thing run so smoothly, and thank you to all of the entrepreneurs and all of the program managers who've spoken today, because innovation is about people, and it's about people connected to other people, supporting each other to achieve their goals. To Ais's point earlier, it's about kind of knowing your focus, but also knowing your limitations and where you can bring other people in. And I hope this has been an interesting event for everybody. I've certainly enjoyed it. I think we've got a bit of a shopping list, Scott and I and others from the LEP and from the public sector who've been on the call as well as delegates, have some really good things to think about, and some nuances around the usual stuff. So I'd just like to, again, thank everyone, and thank you to all of our attendees and delegates. I know some people are having to go now and drifting off, but it's been another very interesting Connected Innovation morning, and we'll be back soon, probably in the early part of the new year. There will be more. There are loads of events happening across the whole region all the time. Check out the various hub websites like Hethel, like Innovation Labs, like Innovation Martlesham, like Epicenter. There are others are available. Check out the Techiest website, the stuff on the LEP website. Engage with us on social media, follow us on LinkedIn, Twitter, etc. And on that note, I'm going to wish you all a very good, have a nice lunch and a good afternoon, and we'll see you soon. All the best.